Hello, everybody. This is Terry Stephenson. Again, I was a officer at the Hughes unit in Gatesville. Went there in 1990 from diagnostic unit in Huntsville, bird unit now. And then I transferred to San Saba in 1993. I wrote a song way back in the late 80s about prison, because that's what it's like on the inside. And I'm going to introduce that song, do a little bit of it. As an intro here, we might do it as a theme song for the videos. But on July the 4th, the main prison story here concerns an inmate. I saw the news on Yahoo that an inmate in Texas had died on waiting execution or whatever on death row. Been there over 30 years, and I almost knew immediately who that person was. So I scrolled on down and read it, and it was Billy Mason, William Mason, or Billy the Kid Mason, which I never knew him as that name. It was just Billy Mason. He was our cook in the officer's dining room at the Hughes unit in late 1990. Now I'm going to do this song here about prison, just a little bit of it for an intro, and then I'll get into the Billy Mason story and do a song that I wrote about death row about 10 or 12 years ago. But this song was written several years ago, and it's just kind of the way it is in prison. It's called That's What It's Like on the Inside. Now, I'm not going to do the whole song, but just a little intro to it. They talk about in the world like it's so far away, but it's just past the gray walls they see every day. They may be so young, but they're wishing for age, a time in the next century or just a decade. Catch your top button, quit running your head. Stand on the green line is what the boss said. They're a name and a number with frustration inside, and they work to pay for a price in time. And that's what it's like on the inside, living in hell, just doing time. That's what it's like on the inside. How can a man have pride when he's wearing white? How can a man have pride when he's wearing white? Okay, the news story came on. Billy Mason, ODR cook, Hughes unit, 1990, late 1990. And knowing an inmate, of course, is different. You have to keep your life on that side, and you can't be personal in any of those things. At least back in the old days, it probably happens a lot more now. But I used to talk to him. He was our third shift cook. I would work second shift, and I would see him for an hour, say, before I went home. And he'd tell me little stories about prison. He said that he had been on death row before. Now, I couldn't confirm that, but he was in the prison for murder. That's obvious. And you can find a lot of that information online. But anyway, he was always telling prison stories. And like I said, he said he was on death row and he served all this time. He also said he tried to escape, and he was shot outside the perimeter. Him and another inmate, maybe two inmates, I'm not real sure, but Billy Mason was shot in the leg, he told me. Well, anyway, late 1990, he was our cook, as I mentioned, and he was kind of a funny guy. He had tattoos. Of course, he's a white supremacist, as everybody in prison pretty much is. It's white if they're on a certain custody level or in ad seg, as everybody knows that. It's the most prejudiced place in the whole wide world, as according to what race, according to who the biggest inmates, according to what it may be, they're going to run a cell block, run a dorm, and all that. Of course, we're talking here 1990, 1993, 1980, or 1989, etc. But anyway, he told me that, like I said, that he was on death row, but the death penalty was abolished while he was there. And he later got out of prison, but in the meantime, he was our cook, and he thought he was going to get out probably late 1990. And he told me that he was up for parole, and he was just extremely elated, happy smiling and such a different demeanor. I mean, he never was a bad inmate. As anybody that's been around prisoners know that as far as the officers goes, that people in prison for murder are generally not bad inmates. They're some of your best inmates. Now, we're not talking about serial killers or psychos here. We're only talking about somebody in there for murder. They had a victim, whoever that they murdered, whatever it may be, and they're not really going to bother anybody else. They're not really going to have an attitude. They're not going to try to intimidate anybody. As I was just a 34 or 5-year-old youngster in prison, not really youngster, but whatever. But I wasn't a very big guy. I probably weighed 160 pounds. Billy Mason was born in 1954. I noticed I was born in 56. Like I said, he thought he was going to get out, and he was just elated. He was so happy, like he'd never been, or like in so long. So right about that same time that he thought he was getting out, he was denied parole, at least for a while, whatever it may be, because I came back to work, and he was just down and out. His demeanor had changed. He was down and sad and depressed, the whole 9 yards. Well, anyway, I was going on leave around that time. I had a week, 2 weeks, whatever it may be. I had a lot of time off back then. So I was on leave and left for that time. When I came back, Billy Mason was gone. He had actually been paroled. So, of course, I never saw the man again. But it wasn't long after that, probably within weeks, a few weeks, that an inmate or inmates had a clipping from the paper in Houston where he had murdered his wife. Just as soon as he got out of prison, he had supposedly kidnapped. He was charged with kidnapping his wife, put her in the trunk of the car, drove her to the San Jacinto River, beat her in the head with concrete or rocks or whatever, killed her, tied rocks to her and threw her in the river, and then her body come up floating a few days later. Well, they made that a capital offense due to the kidnapping. But then again, like I said, he was on death row all that time because he never was given a date. And I used to look up his case and see, well, let's see if Mason's, what's going to happen here. But nothing ever showed until July the 4th. Showed that he died. Didn't say in prison, but at the hospital, whatever it may be, from a heart attack, evidently. But like I said, he was our cook, and the inmates remembered him with the clipping and all. And it seemed like when he had that new case on him, the capital case on him this time, that maybe the inmates had a little hero worship. They were talking about, hey, you remember Mason? They check this out, this kind of stuff. So anyway, he'd been on death row for 30 plus years. His case, or I think it was charged in 1991, and however long it took to actually convict him from county jail to put him in prison. But his case started, I believe, in January of 1991. So he was locked up and then on death row for all that time. Now, death row, I've never worked. I've never seen it. I worked ad seg, and you really don't know how anybody could stand to be locked up for 23 hours a day in a cell. I've been in cells, of course. I know how little it is and all that, and I just don't see how in the world that anybody could adjust to that, could actually have a reason to live, to be in a cell like that, as small as it is. But you see it all the time, and Mason made it all that time. For 30-something years, he was locked up in a cell. Well, I wrote a song about death row. I tried to write a song about Billy Mason. Never could, about the life that's facing, or whatever, the life that he's facing, the life of Billy Mason, whatever. Had some good rhymes there. Just never could write the song, which is no biggie, I guess, because now I've got an ending to it. So maybe I wasn't supposed to. So maybe I can write it later. I'll get my wife to hand my guitar back. I'm going to do this song that I wrote about 10 or 12 years ago about death row. And it's kind of just a poem with parts in it that are sung. Now, if I flub this song, I'm just going to keep on going. This is a live performance, so all I think I want to do is let you hear the story that I wrote about death row, and the emotions, the sadness, and all the bad things that go on there. Ain't nobody else knows what it's like to have a day to end your life. And you're sitting right in the heat and the hell and hear the voices and the screams and the yells. You have to stand in the corner and turn on your light if you want to eat or give up your ride. And the boss man, he comes around another time to ask you if you want to go outside on the rec yard. Yeah, there's lots of men with him too. Some that are new and others with a date that's overdue. Yeah, some waits have been over for many years, while others are just starting to live in fear. Clanging doors and sliding cells, and in the distance there's more blood-curdling yells. Well, he's escorted down the hall, through the bars and with his handcuffs and in his drawers. "23 hours a day in a cell waiting for the day they'll send him to hell. What's he do all day long in a 6x8 all alone? 1 hour on the yard if he goes at all. And what else could he really care about when he's waiting for death to call him out?" Now let me go back over that again. 23 hours a day in a cell waiting for the day they'll send him to hell. What's he do all day long in a 6x8 all alone? 1 hour a day on the yard for wreck if he goes at all. Yeah, what else could he really care about when he's waiting for death to call him out? Yeah, the only time he sees a dog or a cat is when the county jail takes him back, just for a few days for a change of pace. Well, another official looks over his case, but he ain't giving up at all if there's still a chance to find an error in the law. Well, he's hoping that he's still got time to reduce his sentence from death to life. Yeah, he used to go in circles and pace like a wild animal in a cage, but he settled in with books and things after years here without a change. Yeah, now and then the block raises hell, and they start chunking things and raising hell. They're flooding cells. And what else is there for a man to do when he's living in a cage in a zoo? 23 hours a day in a cell waiting for the day to send him to hell. What's he do all day long in a 6x8 all alone? 1 hour a day on the yard for wreck if he goes at all. Yeah, what could he really care about when he's waiting for death to call him out? Yeah, to feel the sun is even rare. You can't even get a breath of fresh air. And what crazy kind of thoughts in his head about waking up and being dead. Yeah, there's no one there to touch or hold, just a metal bunk and a commode. His life is gone, but he's holding on to his soul. It's going to forever wander on death row. What kind of dreams could he have about looking at a needle and being strapped down? What bitter words is there to say when the Reaper comes to take him away? And he can't deal with life itself and considers taking it himself. Yeah, once his spirit inside breaks, it'd be more than he can take. 'Cause his life is gone and his soul's already wandering on death row. What kind of dreams could he have about looking at a needle and being strapped down? What bitter words is there to say before the Reaper comes to take him away? And when he can't deal with life itself and considers taking it himself. Once his spirit inside breaks, it's more than he can take. 'Cause his life's already gone and his soul's already wandering on death row. Yeah, on death row. On death row. That song goes out to family Billy Mason. Anybody else in AdSeg spent time there, knows anything about death row? Billy Mason, like I said, was passed away on July the 4th. Been on death row for over 30 years. And like I said, he was our cook in the officer's dining room. He used to have this kind of different sound in his voice. I don't know if it's a lisp, but some inmate used to talk about him when he said cream gravy. They said he said queen gravy, but that's just a little throw in there about Billy Mason. But one thing that I'll say about Billy Mason is that been on death row for all that time, over 30 years. And I'm not a judge, but regardless, I don't know what the other side of him was like other than the respect he showed me and any officers and any inmates. Never had problems. And I hope he found peace. I hope he found peace of mind before he was gone. And like I said, I'm not the judge to say, but he did this. No, we don't know. We don't know about the hereafter. We don't know what God thinks about those things, how the forgiveness and all that. So I'll say, rest in peace, Billy Mason, for whatever it's worth. Billy Mason, again, July 4th, 2025. On Independence Day, he received his freedom. Rest in peace, Billy Mason.